When we think about SpaceX and their ambitions to colonize Mars, this is the ship, of course, that immediately comes to mind. The Starship. Beautiful, sleek, advanced, innovative, completely reusable, definitely the tour de force of our efforts to colonize the solar system. And on the other hand, when we think about NASA, this behemoth is what comes to mind. The SLS is wasteful, expensive, uses very outdated technologies, and has actually put the entire Artemis program in danger. It's gone way over budget, taken years longer than it was supposed to, and is the complete antithesis of what the Starship is. I mean, it may be a very powerful rocket, but that's about all it's got going for it. But it makes a lot of politicians happy, it provides a lot of jobs in a wide variety of states. It's actually the classic example of just how corrupt the National Aeronautics and Space Administration has become over the years. Very sad. In spite of its past accomplishments, it would seem that NASA has seen its best days and they are behind them. They have nothing significant to contribute to our future in manned spaceflight and especially in getting mankind to the red planet. But is that really the case? Good evening, and welcome to a very special episode of the Angry Astronaut. As most of you know, this is part 2 in a collaborative series that I'm doing with To the Future regarding Elon Musk's ambitions to colonize Mars and how he might be able to carry this out. This particular episode concerns NASA's role in these ambitions and whether or not NASA has anything to contribute. Now, as you could probably tell from the intro, I regard the Starship as probably the best way, or one of the best ways, that we could possibly colonize the red planet, and the SLS as one of the most idiotic ways that we could try to do it. But that having been said, is NASA completely useless? Well, not at all. As a matter of fact, there are many, many indications that NASA is almost as interested in long-term human presence on the red planet as Elon Musk is. And what I'm going to do for you tonight is give you a list of 10 very important innovations or things that NASA is doing or has already done that will be invaluable contributions to Elon Musk's ambitions to colonize Mars. So here we go. 10 things that NASA can do or is planning to do that will help Elon Musk in his ambitions to colonize the red planet along with 1 million of the rest of us. Let's get going. Well, this one was pretty obvious. NASA has been landing unmanned probes on the surface of Mars for decades, providing invaluable information to anyone who might want to colonize the planet. As a matter of fact, the first artificial object to land on the surface of Mars did so before the Apollo projects even ended. Well, I can't exactly say landed. In November of 1971, the Soviet Mars 2 crashed into the Martian surface, providing little or no data to the human species, but the Russians do have the distinction of getting the first artificial object to Mars, so there's that. But since that time, NASA's robot reconnaissance, along with those from other nations, have provided information that's absolutely invaluable to anybody who wants to colonize this planet. This includes soil and atmospheric composition, the nature of Martian dust storms. As a matter of fact, a probe arriving next year is going to provide even more information about those particular threats. On top of that, also radiation levels at the surface, which proved to be much different than we had anticipated, and the presence of water reserves, all sorts of things which Elon used to select his potential landing sites for his first Martian settlements. And of course, there's the existence of microbial life on Mars, which seems more and more likely the more information that we gain. From the first information that we gained from 1976 from the Viking landers, all the way from the discovery of methane and oxygen in unusual quantities in the Martian atmosphere, all of which seem to indicate the presence of life. This life may or may not be a threat to future colonization, but even if it isn't, discovering alien life on another planet would spark a gold rush of investigative and scientific expeditions to this planet, and other agencies would be more than happy to fund Musk's efforts in order to gain more information about these discoveries. With any luck, the NASA Perseverance rover set to launch in 2020, or the less talked about ExoMars lander from the ESA set to launch in 2022, will definitively answer the question as to whether or not there is life on Mars, which could be a real game changer for the support that could come for Elon Musk's colonization ambitions. Not long ago, NASA had much better ideas on how to get to Mars, utilizing this ship, the Copernicus B, and an innovative new type of propulsion called nuclear thermal. Now recently, Congress directed NASA to resurrect this form of propulsion, and it too could be a game changer for Elon Musk. Now, the science behind this propulsion has been around for a very long time, as you can see from these videos. Instead of conventional rockets, which use chemical reactions to drive propellant out the nozzle of a rocket, it instead uses a nuclear reaction to superheat hydrogen, which is the lightest element in the universe, and drive it out the nozzle at a much higher rate of speed. The faster your propellant goes out the nozzle, the more efficient your rocket, the less fuel you use, and therefore the faster speed you can attain. As a matter of fact, at this time in the late 60s, these type of rockets could prove as much as twice as effective as chemical rockets, and these days it's even better. So Congress has directed NASA to develop this technology with a test firing target of 2024. And why would this be a game changer for Elon Musk? Well, a starship equipped with this kind of propulsion could conceivably reach Mars in as little as 100 days instead of 6 months. Less time in microgravity, less exposure to radiation and cosmic rays, plus, conceivably, a wider launch window. If you're going to launch a large number of starships and use this type of propulsion, you could leave earlier or later than the traditional launch window and still make 6 months. But why be satisfied with 100 days to Mars when you can do it at 39? At the Ad Astra Company, with NASA backing and support of course, they're working on a kind of plasma drive that they call VASIMR, and it uses high-energy radio waves to ionize a gas like argon or krypton, and then powerful electromagnetic forces to drive the ions out of the nozzle of a rocket. And instead of traditional ion drives, which tend to be quite slow, these can accelerate at rates that we can barely comprehend, achieving speeds that will get us to Mars in 39 days and also make the outer solar system accessible. Of Of course, it requires a tremendous amount of energy and something perhaps for the future, but nevertheless, NASA is the one working on it. Now, I hate to break it to you, but as cool as these SpaceX suits are, and as much as we might like them, they can't handle extravehicular activity on Mars. Not even close. They can handle vacuum and fire, and that's about it. If we want to actually make our way onto the surface of Mars, we're going to need something like this. Now, as cumbersome as this thing might look, and as much as we might hate the design, the fact remains that this suit is the only one that will provide the necessary protection from the extremes of climate, the radiation, and other adverse conditions on the Martian surface, plus 8 hours worth of oxygen supply for extravehicular activities. And on the other hand, the suit on the right here is NASA's equivalent to what SpaceX has for their Crew Dragon ship. And this is only for use for inside a vessel rather than on the surface of a hostile planet. Like it or not, we're going to need a suit like the one on the left in order to be able to survive on Mars, and NASA is going to be the one to provide it. Now, don't despair, guys. The folks at MIT are busily working on a new type of suit called a biosuit, which scans the user's physical form and then applies multiple layers of advanced fabrics that are skin tight and still provide protection from temperatures, pressure, and other adverse conditions that we'll encounter on the surface of Mars. Now, of course, this is still in development and is going to require further funding, hopefully from NASA, but if not, perhaps from Elon Musk, and could be a real game changer for surface operations. For it would give an astronaut a whole lot more freedom of movement, obviously, on the surface. Plus, if there's any damage to the suit, the biosuit is designed to be far easier to repair. Well, we can only hope. Now, as I'm filming this, although hopefully tomorrow that's going to change, SpaceX has yet to send a single human being into orbit, nor have they conducted a single EVA, although that may change at some point in the near future as well. So as of now, NASA and agencies like it are the only ones with practical experience in keeping people alive in space, let alone the far more complicated matters of keeping people alive in extravehicular activities, and that's probably going to be the case for some time to come. Therefore, SpaceX would be well advised to call upon their experience. In addition, in terms of keeping people alive in larger quantities than just a few at a time, as in the Crew Dragon. As a matter of fact, when it comes to life support, this is the closest thing we have that approximates the Starship in terms of volume, in terms of keeping astronauts alive for a long period of time, in terms of just about everything when we're talking about life support. And SpaceX, as they design the Starship, would be well advised to learn from the experiences of the ISS when they're trying to keep their astronauts alive on the 6-month journey at least to Mars. These structures, based on the 3D printed habitation design called Martia, which won a NASA competition for surface habitation structures a few years ago, gives me the strongest indication that NASA is extremely interested in long-term stays on this planet's surface, including perhaps colonization. I mean, NASA has run a bunch of these kinds of contests, like this one, the Martian Ice House, which came in first place in another competition that involves 5 centimeters worth of ice in a region of Mars where ice never melts to provide protection from radiation. Each design is supposed to have recirculating air and water being self-sufficient along with its own food supply, again indicating long-term stays on the Martian surface. And there are many other examples, each one involving NASA giving out large amounts of prize money with the goal of establishing long-term presence on the red planet. Each of these designs is supposed to be built by robot using natural materials local to the Martian surface, are radiation resistant like this one, which uses a considerable amount of regolith to protect from radiation, along with natural light for every different design. But why is this so important? Why can't we use something like the Boring Corporation to create subsurface habitats as has been suggested in the past? Well, in a paper by Elena Romanova, linked in the description, she describes the psychiatric problems that we humans tend to face when living underground for long periods of time. Instead, living on the surface with natural light like this front porch concept for the ice house, which allows people to wander out into this environment without a spacesuit, is far better for our natural inclinations, because after all, we evolved in the light and not underground. Now, given that we're not used to living inside, not used to putting on a spacesuit every time we have to wander outside, not used to the extreme cold or the other adverse conditions that Mars has to offer, doesn't it make a lot more sense to live in environments like this? Pleasant and aesthetically pleasing to the eye types of interior designs rather than some kind of mine. And not only that, windows, allowing us to see the beautiful and alien Martian landscape that Martian colonists would have found so compelling in the first place. It's NASA that's sponsoring these contests and the companies that produce these designs, and NASA that SpaceX should call upon when they begin building their cities. Each member of this hopeful graduating class of NASA's new astronauts will be lucky if they get one chance to go on the ISS. Some of them perhaps 2 or 3 if they are exceptional. But each different graduating class of astronauts has a substantial number that never get a chance to go into space at all, or perhaps only once. This would be an ideal crop of highly trained individuals, and some of them with experience that SpaceX could make use of, some of them from other nations, who also, I'm sure, would be very eager for a chance to go into space given the opportunity. Of course, there's the Russians, who have a huge amount of space experience, but on the rare occasion that they train a female cosmonaut, she only gets 1 or 2 chances to go up into orbit. SpaceX could offer her a new career opportunity if that were to arise. Yes, SpaceX should definitely make use of NASA talent along with that of other space agencies, and clearly they already do. Now, as Elon Musk has mentioned several times, you can't send a fleet of starships to Mars and hope for them to be able to return without manufacturing the necessary propellant on the planet, called in-situ resources. Now, the funny thing is that NASA has come to the same conclusion, is already hard at work manufacturing machines that also use Methalox fuel, utilizing Martian resources as well as resources on the moon. My point is, why duplicate your research? When NASA is already hard at work and developing new technologies in order to accomplish this, why not simply make use of their talent and their innovations? One of my favorite innovations is this little guy, the Resolve rover, which is designed to hunt down the resources that you need and then bring them back for processing. Of course, if you're going to talk about resources that are absolutely necessary to colonize, you need to talk about number 8 on our list, food production. Now, a lot of you probably know that Elon Musk has a brother named Kendall that's hard at work on aeroponics, and although NASA's working on that too, they recently funded a contest, and the winner was a solution called aquaponics. Aquaponics uses tilapia maintained in their egg form during the transition from Mars, which can be done at the right temperature, and then once they hatch, the fish fertilize the water, which in turn is used to fertilize the plants, which rotate through the fertilized water in this particular design here. Now, the waste material from the process is used to feed the fish, and as you can see, it can be a very compact design. It's also a little bit more energy efficient at a place where energy is going to be a premium. Plus, you get fish out of the deal. Not too bad, and it's from NASA. Now, aquaponics is yet another innovation that transitions into another necessity for Mars colonization, and that's power production. And this particular building, which again is the result of a NASA competition, involves the use of a sea of solar panels and a pyramid-type greenhouse that involves aquaponics to provide power, heat, and food for a Martian colony. Now, of course, Elon knows a thing or two about solar power as well, but this particular design concentrates the solar energy, a necessity since solar power is less potent at Mars' distance from the sun, and concentrates it into a single collector at the top of the pyramid, providing much more power along with heat and light for the plants, and therefore power and food for the colony. A very unique design, and once again, a product of NASA innovation. Of course, solar energy has its issues, not least of which are dust storms, and if Elon wants to make use of nuclear power, having NASA as an ally is going to be pretty key if he wants to take one or many nuclear reactors to Mars on his starships. Now, originally I wasn't going to include this one at all, but what happened today brought me back to April 3rd when this particular incident took place, and Boca Chica gal was kind enough to allow me to use her footage. And this particular incident, as we discovered later, was as the result of a mistake. And when I reported it, I advised that SpaceX move a little bit more slowly and take a few more precautions with SN4. And who knows if they actually did. But unfortunately, as most of us know, today this happened. Now, Mary, we are all very grateful that you're okay, and so is everybody else. But I think this particular incident demonstrates that this is a very, very difficult undertaking that we are embarking upon here with SpaceX. And when it comes down to it, all of the things that I've listed off this evening, I hope have indicated that NASA has a lot to offer SpaceX in their ambitions, and at least some of these should be considered, including safety protocols, and perhaps moving a bit more slowly, as NASA might in this situation. Not to imitate them or give them any kind of control here, but simply to consider it, because at least for those who worked so hard on this particular project, this must have been a massive disappointment. To the casual bystander at Boca Chica, it would seem absolutely impossible that what happened today could eventually become something like this. It just seems like a hopeless dream. But all of us know better. We made progress with this prototype. We at least managed a static fire, although all of us were hoping for so much more. And as the investigation of this particular explosion continues, and if it is discovered that it was an oversight or a mistake, or the fact that we were rushing things a bit that led to this particular incident, we might learn that SpaceX has a lot more to learn from NASA than any of us might have supposed. But until that happens, I encourage all of you to stay angry about space.